Hey guys, welcome back to the fourth video in this Python series where I'm talking about the Django web framework for Python. So in this one we're going to sort of sidestep from the actual Django web framework itself for a little bit, and we're going to talk about Bootstrap, which is a CSS and JavaScript framework that allows you to build websites much quicker and much more beautifully than you might be able to necessarily do on your own unless you have a lot of experience with CSS and JavaScript and all that stuff. But I personally prefer to just do it the quick and easy way and make something look nice but very functional and do that fast. So that's what Bootstrap is really good for, and I'm going to show you how to sort of start implementing that into our Django project. So I'm just going to use the HTML that we've already got in our Django project, and that's where I'm going to put the Bootstrap. So if I just go to getbootstrap.com, that's their website, and you can see on this website all their documentation for everything that's in the CSS and JavaScript library. So you've got CSS here and JavaScript here, and you've got some other stuff as well, like little components, and you know, you can use all these icons in your website for free if you want to, but that's really just sort of extras. The main thing really is the CSS, because it allows you to build things really quickly, as you're going to see in a minute. So the first thing we have to do to be able to use Bootstrap is to get it. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can download it, and that's just by clicking the download button, and that will pretty much give you a file, so a static file that is going to be a something.css or a something.min.css. So in Bootstrap's case it would just be bootstrap.min.css and bootstrap.min.js for the JavaScript library. But in this example I'm not going to show you how to use static files just yet, because that's sort of a separate video, but what I'm going to do instead is use the Bootstrap CDN, because it's a really quick way of being able to get straight into using Bootstrap. So I'm going to copy this code, and all this is saying is go to the Bootstrap server and get me Bootstrap, get me the latest version, just get whatever's there. In fact, it's going to get version 3.3.7 at the time of filming this. It might be slightly different for you if it's updated since then, but it's all going to work the same, so don't worry about it not working or anything like that. The great thing about a CDN is, or a content delivery network, is it pretty much says, right, I'm just going to rely on the fact that Bootstrap's server is going to work, and I'm just going to use it from there instead of hosting it myself on my own computer. So that's the other sort of pros and cons with the static files, because you know exactly where the static files are and the fact that you can access them on your computer at all times. But really that's not very important for this, because we know that the CDN is going to work, and it's pretty reliable, I find, in my experience. So and it tends to be faster, because the CDN is the sort of the fancy bit which allows it to load that faster than you potentially could with a static file, if depending on how you set it up. So let's go and incorporate this bit of code into the HTML file. So this is just the login.html, which is in the templates accounts folder that we've created in the last video, and I'm just going to put this link to the Bootstrap in the head of the HTML document. So that's generally where you want to put all the stuff that says, okay, right, so this is what I need before I can really do anything with this HTML document. So now I'm going to create a button, and I'm just going to give this a class, and I'm just going to say btn, which is a Bootstrap thing, and btn default, and let's spell that correctly, and then let's go and see. So I need to run my development server first. Let's go and do that first. So python manage.py run server. I told you get pretty used to this. So we'll go and do that, and now the server's running, so let's go and refresh, and you can see we've got a Bootstrap button, and it's a little bit small at the moment because we haven't put any text in it. So in between these two button tags I'm just going to say I don't know, login, so that could be a login button for example, and there is the default Bootstrap button. So if we go to Bootstrap and we go to CSS and then we go to button, it can be a little bit hard to find because there's lots of buttons. Let's just use this contents menu. I quite like this little contents menu, pretty cool. So this is the buttons section, and it gives you all the information that you need on the buttons in Bootstrap. so you can see button default, that's the class that we use just to create this very simple button here, and there's really lots of them. So you've got these different styles that are sort of preset for you, so they can be quite handy just for saying sort of different scenarios if you want to warn them, or just present information, or do various things like that, and it gives you that sort of default thing to be able to get you up and running. So for example, I could just do I could change this to danger and save that, and that corresponds to the red one, so we should see that it just changes to red. So there you go. I wouldn't recommend making a login button red, because that's probably going to turn users off from clicking it, but there you go, each their own. So now what I'm going to do is actually take this off because it looks horrendous, and then I'm going to show you how I use it in my website. So maxgoodridge.com is just a personal website of mine, and you can see I've got some buttons here, and if we right click on this and we do inspect elements, say on this YouTube button for example, we can go over here and we can see, so this is the element, this is an A tag, which is just saying, well, this is a link in HTML if you're not aware, and okay, so it's got a link, and it's also got a class, and it says button large, button danger. Those are all Bootstrap things, and then I have an outline class as well, which is my thing. So that's my custom CSS that makes my buttons look slightly different. But what I could do, if I take that off, you can see that my button, see how YouTube just changed pretty much to a standard danger button that we just saw. So it's really not that different from the standard Bootstrap. All I've done is add a CSS class called outline, and then it's back to the way it was. So that's how I chose to customize my buttons. So you can see there's so much potential for customization, and really that did not take a lot of CSS, because the button and the link and everything was already there for me, all the structure. I just had to change the inner background color and the outline color. So it's really not that tricky to be able to do that sort of stuff. So another example is all these things, like all the fonts and things like that. Did you notice that the fonts actually changed? So it gives you much nicer sort of fonts and stuff like that. And also the background colour is not quite white, it's actually very light grey now. But I don't really like the fact that it's off to one side so much, so let's go and change that, go back to our code here. And what we could do is we could use a div tag. Now a div tag is sort of like a container, that's how I like to think of it. It just contains all the other tags in a particular section in your website. So I'm going to do div, and the class, it's funny that I say it's like a container, because the class in Bootstrap that I'm going to use for this is called container. And if I just put this div tag at the end of this information, by the way, HTML doesn't care about white space like Python does, so it doesn't really matter how you indent your code, but I just find it more readable if I try to indent it correctly most of the time. So let's go and refresh that, and you can see now that we changed, because I changed this back to the default button, and it's indented much more nicely. So that's one example of how you can use the container class in Bootstrap. But there's tons and tons of classes, so I really recommend that you just go ahead and read this sort of documentation, because there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with Bootstrap. There's another one, for example, let's just show you something else in Bootstrap that's called Jumbotron. And let's just put a title in here saying, I don't know, welcome again, with an exclamation mark so you can see the difference. And refresh that, and this is it's a little bit ugly and skewed because it's not properly how you do it, but this is another class that's in Bootstrap, and it's really powerful because it allows you to build websites really quickly. And you can see it's done a lot of the see it's changed the font size, it's changed this background, it's made it edge to edge in the browser, and it's even going to sort of adapt to a mobile device. See, it shrinks and gets bigger and all that sort of stuff. So Bootstrap is very powerful, and even though my example may not perhaps showcase it perfectly, I hope that it's given you an idea of what you can do with Bootstrap, because it is a very powerful framework, and I recommend that you play around with it, because you can create some much nicer sites. Like, if I spend a bit more time on it, you can create stuff that's more like my website here, for example, with a nice sort of image in the background, and it's got text and all this sort of stuff. So this black section, or almost black section, that's a Bootstrap Jumbotron class, which you can actually see here. So it says Jumbotron there, that's a Bootstrap thing. And really all of this is Bootstrap. All I've done is just add my custom text. So I'll leave it there, but in the next one we're going to be talking a bit more about the static files that I mentioned earlier on in this video, and how you can incorporate that custom CSS into your project if you want to, along with any JavaScript you want as well.